Greetings and welcome to Behind the Shadows. My name is Susan Finelli and I am your host and author of Behind the Shadows, a program where we go behind the shadows of what meets the eye. Today we will be going behind the shadows of thinking animals, and our very special guest is Bonnie Wyper. Bonnie is the co-founder and president of Thinking Animals, Inc. She obtained an advanced certificate in psychology of animal behavior and conservation. Bonnie, welcome to Behind the Shadows.
Susan, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you. You know how dear this subject is to me.
I do know. I do know.
So before we get started, I'd like to just tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to Thinking Animals.
To this. Well, as we were discussing earlier, my background is very varied. I really started off as a fashion designer in Paris in the late 60s, early 70s, where I was designing for really wonderful fashion icons like the Duchess of Windsor and Maria Callas. And then interestingly enough, 20 years later, I found that I was also designing a line of clothes for Barbie the doll.
How
so
interesting.
Another style fashion, another icon of fashion and style. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. My background really is involved in the arts and design. I ran the State Arts Council for the state of Rhode Island. I've been, I set up International Arts Organization. I've run art galleries here in New York as well as in Newport, Rhode Island. I've been involved in the advertising business, marketing, communications. I started a magazine about how new technologies were changing our lives, and then a website about nutrition and diet, all kinds of things, which led me to, at a certain point, ask myself, where are my core values? What are the things? What is it that's more important to me than anything else? And, you know, I have grown up with children. My grandfather had a farm, and he raised horses and chickens and all kinds of things. And I was always the kid that found the injured bird and I continue to find injured pigeons and sparrows
yes,
and starlings. And
I have a neighbor who does that, and she picks them up and she brings them to a vet, and then she lets them go.
Oh, exactly, exactly. So even in Costa Rica, where I just came back from, I found a blue-crowned motmot, a beautiful, beautiful bird that had a broken wing. I mean, I just seemed to find. So I enrolled in Hunter College, which has a program called the Animal Behavior and Conservation. And when I was at Hunter, I was writing papers and doing a lot of research. And I realized that there was an enormous amount of research out there that the public would love to know about animals and how they think and what they're capable of, but that they never have access to because it's behind the academic wall. So I got together with two of the teachers there, and we started Thinking Animals with the express purpose of taking this research, inviting scientists who have done this to let the public know about how smart and how smart animals are, what they're capable of.
Right. Yeah.
Do they have emotions? Do they have different personalities? You know, what does science now know about animal cognition? It certainly wasn't always that way.
What animal owners do know and have known all along. I mean, we know our animals have emotions and they think. And as I told you when we were preparing for this show, what got me wondering, how do animals think? And it's been 9 years until I finally found you. But when my little guy Riley was only 7 months old, we had been house training him, so you know you get them in.
Yep.
And when it was time to, and his bed was within that confined area. And when it was time to expand him, we took the gate away. And now I had to move the bed because it was in the middle of the kitchen. So I'm looking all around, and I said, where should I put this bed? So I put it in a certain area. And that night, my husband and I are having dinner, and all of a sudden we have wood floors, and all of a sudden we hear, and he comes running in. He had been in the living room, and he comes running in. He was this big. The bed was this big. He grabs the bed and drags it to where he wanted it. So I said, he had to be thinking all day, I don't like that bed there. And
where do I want this bed?
Exactly. And we left the bed there the whole time.
And what am I going to claim as my spot in this apartment?
Exactly. So at that point, I said to myself, how do animals think? Do they bark to themselves? They can't talk to themselves.
Well, that's one of the big, that's one of the conundrums facing any scientist that wants to find that. Animals can't communicate with us. They're voiceless. Right. So how do you design research studies that will peel back the layers of the animal mind to find out what's underneath? And and certainly some studies are better than others. But for a long time, what's really interesting, for a long time, scientists didn't believe that animals had any intelligence or even a mind or consciousness, for that matter. In the 17th century, Descartes, the philosopher, said that animals were nothing more than automatons who, and I say who because I, to some extent, anthropomorphize animals, as we all, for a while that was not really it was kind of looked down upon if you anthropomorphized animals. It's something, if we're going to really understand and empathize with animals, we need to do, as long as you don't overdo it. Animals live in their own worlds, not us. But Descartes said animals only live from instinct. They have no mind of their own. They have no intention. They don't think. They don't have a mind. It wasn't really until the 60s that what's called the cognitive revolution started happening, and people started studying the minds of large-brained animals, cetaceans like dolphins and porpoises and blackfish, or like blackfish, killer whales, and monkeys. And it really sort of started with a man named Donald Griffith, who was a wonderful scientist who kind of posited the question, can we afford to entertain the idea that animals don't think? Prior to that, it was, do animals have no, they don't really have a mind. And scientists studied their behavior with Pavlovian conditioning, with operant conditioning and those kinds of things, but nobody really thought. They thought that their behavior was instinctual. Instinctive. So he said, we can't afford to think that they don't think. Let's find out. Right. So they started looking at how a lot of scientists started looking at how children, human children, develop. Right. And there are benchmarks in the development of the infant mind, or the young child's mind. And applying some of those tests to animals. Right. And in 1975, Gordon Gallup, a scientist out in California, conducted what's called a mirror self-recognition test, which is used to determine in young children when the brain is mature enough to recognize that the creature looking back at them from the mirror is actually themselves. Right. Prior to that, kids will look behind the mirror to find the other person that's in there, and then they go through this period of what's called sort of contingency testing, where they raise an arm and they, oh my gosh, that person's doing that. Who's that? Doing the same thing, and they open their mouth.
I remember when Riley would look at a mirror, like, he didn't realize it was looking at a vision of himself, and he'd be looking around, and when he first saw a mirror, he ran away. He looked in, and then he ran, and then he kind of creeped back a little bit. But I'm not sure he knew who he was looking at.
But it's about
who's that strange dog in my house?
Exactly. What is he doing?
Yeah, exactly.
So what's interesting about the test is that after they kind of do all this contingency testing, a scientist will put a mark someplace on them that they can't get at themselves, or they don't know it's there unless they look at the mirror.
They see it.
And if they try to take it off,
then they know.
And that heralds that the brain has gotten to the point where the human brain has gotten to the point where it can start understanding the intention of other people. It can, if it understands the intention of other people, then it can start empathizing with other people. Oh, that person hurts. Ooh. And you see the baby going, oh, mommy's got a boo-boo.
Right.
And it's the first step of self-awareness.
Well, animals empathize. I mean, I don't know if that's
they
what you
didn't.
call
They
it.
didn't know that.
They didn't know it because
back then.
Animals know. First of all, they know if there's another animal in the house.
Yep.
They know if there's a problem with that animal.
Yes.
And also, they know when the owner, when you don't feel well. You read all the time, cancer patients, their dogs stay with them, or veterans when they come back.
Yeah.
The dogs don't leave their sides.
But in many respects, we're talking about animals like dogs or cats, companion animals who have evolved over the last,
Right.
dogs, it's about 30,000 years, that have evolved to be more like us and to be
Right.
more responsive to our needs. We feed them, we raise them, etc. So they've evolved. But other animals, chimpanzees, dolphins, elephants,
Right.
once we've discovered, and it's even now controversial, that there are certain species, and even within those species, some are more intelligent than others. Some can do it. A human infant can pass what's called the mirror test at about 18 months. A chimpanzee at about 24 months. Then it was done in 1995 with dolphins by a group of people. Lou Herman was involved in dolphin research, Diana Reese and Laurie Marino, Diana being one of my co-founders, with dolphins. Now, and then elephants. And these are all animals that have large neocortex, folded brains, so there's a lot of area in the brain. And then, in 2008, some scientists in Germany found out that magpies could pass the test, which is amazing. So now they've figured out, scientists are remapping the avian brain and realizing that the avian, while it doesn't look like our brain, there are areas that are functionally similar to ours.
Well, I just finished reading Jane Goodall's book, Reason for Helping. She's wonderful. I follow her on Facebook, and she's just wonderful. But learning about how the chimps, I mean, you hear about all the time how, human-like they are, or chimp-like we are. I mean, who knows? But
they're older than we are.
They're older than we are.
So we're like them.
I agree. I know a lot of people don't think that way, but I definitely agree. But reading her stories, because she in this book she takes you through decades and decades of watching these chimps and how they've learned to use tools and how they mother their infants and mourn. They mourn when their infants die.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It breaks your heart.
It breaks your heart.
It does.
It does.
To think what we do to them in labs.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about labs, I just want to read a quote from Baba Diom.
Baba Diom. It's on our website. Yeah.
It's on your website because talking about what we do to them and how we should really be conserving. But this is a quote that I found, and it said, "For in the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught."
Yes, absolutely. And so often that's the case, that people don't think, and it's not until someone says to them, "Have you thought about this?" that a light bulb goes on. Yeah. And you think, I mean, you watch people going through a zoo lots of times. They'll make noises at the animals. They'll throw stones. They'll try to bang on the glass.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, somebody will say to them, "Would you like that to be done to you if you were?" And all of a sudden they go, "Oh, gosh, that must be awful."
Well, one time we were at a petting zoo with either a niece or nephew, I can't remember, but the child in front of us started kicking a goat.
Oh.
And I went to the father. And I said, "Well, how would you like if that goat started kicking?" I said, "You're standing right here."
Oh, my gosh.
You're standing here. And another time when I was walking Riley, some kid spit at him, and I said to his father, "Is this how you're?
Is this how you're bringing up your child?"
Your child, you know, and my husband says, "You better be careful because someday someone's going to kill you." You know?
Yeah.
But
No,
you can't just be silent.
No, you can't be silent. You can't,
Yeah,
because those children need to be taught to respect the creatures that we share this earth with.
That's right.
They need to be taught. They need to be taught to respect the earth, the environment, the animals, other creatures. We're not the only one, and we're certainly not the most intelligent. Certainly, in one respect, we're the dumbest animal on the earth.
Yeah, you look
I mean, if you think, well, you think we're the only species that destroys its own environment.
Yeah, yeah.
We're the only one. Others live within. They've evolved to live within their own environment, and they don't destroy it.
They don't destroy it. Let's talk a little bit about the mission of Thinking Animals, and also you have a scientific advisory board.
I do.
So I'd like us to let our audience know just what and how you do it.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely. Our mission is to really to bring scientists in to share their latest research with the public. Our feeling is that if people know how intelligent animals are, that they have emotions, they have different personalities, that they mourn their kids, that they're creative, that they're very similar to us. After all, we evolved from them. The separation between us and animals is a matter of degree, not an absolute line. It's just a matter of degree. That if they know that and understand that, then they will care about what happens to animals. They will care about the humane treatment. They will care about the conservation efforts that are going on around the world to save them from extinction. So in our mind, it's kind of the first step to making people aware of how sophisticated these creatures are and why we ethically and morally need to take care of them. We share the earth with them.
Share the earth with them. Maybe you just want to tell our audience quickly that you have seminars throughout the year.
I should say that. Thank you for saying that.
Yes, if anybody is interested, I know I check that website all the time. It's just I haven't had a chance to get to any of them yet. But
it needs a good updating right now.
Because I'm on the list, I get the email,
Yes.
and you, our audience, can get on the email list so you are aware of when and what they are.
Well, what we've been doing for the last 2 years is holding seminars, lectures, symposia at Hunter College. Hunter has very kindly given us the space to hold these. We are a private nonprofit, and we've been holding them in the Lang Theater. And initially we held them once a month, and then I just did one. I'm not going to be doing one again until September. And what we're doing right now is developing a series of webinars, which are going to be short films, 4, 6, 8 minutes long, about a particular subject, and we will push it out over the internet and have an actual webinar, and then where people can type in questions, and the scientists will be up there to ask them. It'll be live streaming. Although the films will be filmed beforehand and then shown, and then the scientist comes on live to answer the questions. But those we'll use as educational tools. We own the film, so we can go into schools, have a scientist Skype in, and use them, the series, as educational schools. You know, and the first one we're working on right now is with penguins. And with a wonderful person, a wonderful gal named Diane DiNapoli, who wrote the book, The Great Penguin Rescue. And we're going to take a look at that, and where are those penguins now 14 years later?
Well, it's interesting you speak about penguins, because I'm sure what was it, the March of the Penguins?
The March of the Penguins, which was so wonderful.
And even salmon, I mean, they know when and how to get to where they have to get, and then they make the trip back. I mean, that is thinking. But, you know, we spoke about how the domesticated animals, they learn to communicate with us. How do animals communicate with each other?
Well, they all have different, there's a term called Umwelt. It's a German word.
Umwelt? W-E-L-T or V-E-L. Maybe it's V-E-L-T. Umwelt. And what it
means is that every species has its own experience of the world. Mm-hmm. Now, we experience, as does every species, the world through our senses, right. Our perceptions. So our visual, our smell, touch, whatever the other one, sight. But through the evolutionary pathway, human beings developed this big brain of ours. And it's very, very energy intensive. And in order for us to develop this brain, we had to give up some of our other senses. So we see quite well. We really see the world. We perceive the world through our eyes. A dog, on the other hand, perceives the world through its nose. Its nose. We have 5 million scent receptors in our nose. A dog has 220 million scent receptors. Wow. So they live in a world that's defined by scent. They don't see very well. Mm-hmm. They're dichromatic. They only see 2 colors. Yes. They don't see up close. Mm-hmm. So when you drop your biscuit on the floor and your dog's looking all over and it can't see it, yeah. It has to smell it. It has to smell it. Has to smell it, or it has to see it moving. Moving. Ah, interesting. But so their world is defined by smell. We have no idea what their world is like because we don't have that. A huge amount of their brain is given over to olfactory. Mm-hmm. A dolphin or a bat hears the world through the echolocate. Mm-hmm. So their world is defined in many cases by sound, and in a way that dolphins, I'm assuming if they actually see quite well, but dolphins probably perceive us like an X-ray. The sound would bounce off our bones, like but through our skin. Oh. Other animals, insects, birds, have electromagnetic ions in their beaks or in their eyes or in their skin. They're so much more complex than we are. Well, they're not. They live in worlds that they have and environments that they've evolved to live in. We've evolved in one direction, dogs here, cats here, elephants here, et cetera, et cetera. So while I know one of the questions you wanted to ask was, are animals more intelligent than we are? No. They're different. They have a different kind of intelligence. And a dog, they're now training dogs to sniff out cancer. Yes, I saw that. Yes. And they've trained them now. I think the gal who's sort of on the forefront of this has trained dogs for colon cancer, for breast cancer, maybe for lung cancer. Each cancer has a different olfactory signal. Isn't that something? So dogs can smell cancer way before our diagnostic tests can find it. So in that sense, in the dog's world, with smell, he's much more intelligent than we are. We are, yeah. We can't smell cancer. No. And we can't even come up with tests that can do it as well as a dog can do it. Interesting. So when people ask me, and they do quite often, are animals as intelligent or more intelligent than us? They're intelligent in different ways that we are not. We're intelligent in different ways. But each species is intelligent in different ways. In their own way. For instance, an elephant. Katie Payne, who's a wonderful scientist, discovered about 20 years ago that elephants can hear through their feet, the bottom of their feet. And they hear they hear infrasonically, so they hear way below what we're capable of hearing. Mm-hmm. And they can hear up to 6 miles away. So predators or other herds or other elephants. We can't come close to doing that. So are they more intelligent than we are? They mourn their dead. They mourn the loss of, and they remember for decades an area or people that have poached. A baby elephant will remember. And the biggest concern right now in the conservation community in Africa is that elephants will no longer be friendly. Yeah, well, because it's the survival of the fittest. They recognize and they know that human beings are decimating them at this point, and that they will go into hiding, that they won't they won't come out anymore.
Do animals, are they and do they express happiness? I know with our domesticated animals, the tails wag and they get excited, but is it an emotion of happiness?
There is a wonderful book by Jonathan Balcom called, it's about animals experiencing joy, and Mark Beckhoff is another wonderful scientist who has written about animals and play, and animals experience joy. You can look at animals playing. You look at little birds in the park, little sparrows chasing each other, little babies. All babies play. They play as ours do. They play both to learn lessons about how you treat other conspecifics, as they're called, others of the same species. But sometimes they just play with abandon. And you have to assume that that's a kind of joy. When you walk into the door and your dog just comes running up and it's got a big smile on its face, and the tail goes back and forth, and he's jumping up and he's squealing. And if that's not joy,
what the heck
I don't know what is.
Exactly, what is?
But yes, you can see elephants in the wild when they have a little baby just taking its trunk and rubbing the little baby all over, and carrying chickens. Love to take give rides to their baby chicks on their back.
Oh, funny. Well, Bonnie, I cannot believe we are getting cued.
No.
That our time is up, and I am like stunned. We have so much more to talk about here.
Absolutely.
But I want to thank you so much.
This has been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure, indeed.
It's just great. I'm so happy to have gotten to know you as well.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank you, our audience, for joining us today. If there's a topic that you would like us to speak on, you can contact me at susan@behindtheshadows.com. If you've missed any of our programs, you can go onto my website, www.behindtheshadows.com, and click on Public Access Television. And until next time, remember, the brightest light shines behind the shadows. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How much fun this was.
That was great. We barely scratched the surface.
I know, look at all we have to talk about.
All right, I'll come back.